And I find it intriguing that the only litmus test Jesus gives for those who the missionaries will encounter is whether or not they show welcome. In other words, whether or not they love these Christian strangers. Now, I suppose the words that Jesus speaks of welcome could also imply receiving them, welcoming and listening to their message. But primarily the focus seems to be just on welcome, on hospitality, on whether or not a town embraces them and takes care of them. And Jesus says when that happens to cure the sick of those who welcome you, which is to enact tangible signs of that coming rule of God, that kingdom of God that has come near to them. Yet curiously, Jesus says that even for those inhospitable towns, they also are to be told the kingdom of God has come near. Now, Jesus' instructions that we heard speak of extremely urgent work. All that business about not speaking to people on the road is not about being unfriendly. It is about a single-mindedness that is needed by Jesus' followers. There's no time for packing big suitcases. There's no time for pleasantries along the way. There is urgent work to do. Work so urgent there's not enough workers for the job, and it will never get done if they don't pray to the Lord of the harvest for help. And an awful lot hinges on the kindness of others, on whether or not people they've never met decide to welcome them and care for them when they wander into town. Now think about that. Jesus is entrusting the spread of his message to whether or not people are willing to love the strangers he sends out, on whether or not they will open their doors to people with some strange religious message. What if they all had turned out the lights and hidden when the doorbell rang? Now, as I was working on this sermon and got to about this point in it, I started to worry about where it was headed, where it was going. I mean, in Jesus' instructions, the strangers who need to be welcomed are his followers. And in churches today, welcoming strangers is more often than not about welcoming visitors. So what does any of this have to do with us? We're not missionaries. We're not the strangers, other people are. And I got stuck. And I hate to admit it, this happens more often than I would like. And if you happen by the church on such a time, you may see me wandering around the building, refilling my coffee cup over and over again, hoping that something shakes loose in my brain after a while. And I'm hoping that's what happened when I recalled how often people tell me, oh, I don't know my own faith well enough to share it with others. And that reminded me of all those other times I've heard people wish out loud that God was more real, that Jesus was more real to them. And it hit me that many of us need to encounter the good news of Jesus as much as anyone. And suddenly our hospitality and our love to the stranger may take on a whole new significance. Loving the stranger may just turn out to be the way our faith grows, the way it becomes more real to us. If I take what Jesus says in our reading today seriously, God's rule is drawing near, whether I realize it or not. But the tangible experience of that coming kingdom may very well arrive to me via the stranger. You know, in congregations, hospitality to strangers is often thought of in terms of a growth strategy. as a way to get visitors to come back again. But what if, much more than any evangelism technique, loving the stranger ends up being the key ingredient to our recognizing and encountering God's coming kingdom? What if it becomes the key ingredient to our discovering the full and abundant life God intends for you and for me? All praise and glory to the God who journeys to us in Jesus Christ. Thanks be to God.